Hello, everybody. I'm Tinu Akinshola. My full name actually is Tinu Ade, and I was trained as an attorney. I currently work as a contract analyst and acquisition specialist in the procurement department of the local area transportation authority. I don't want to say the actual name, but of course, it's no secret who drives and moves us around in this DC metropolitan area. So that's who my regular Monday through Friday 40-hour job employer is. But on my own, since I was trained as a lawyer and I still do my legal work on my part time, I advocate for women and girls. And I've been in this area for over 26 years. And ever since then, I have been learning a lot, even about our um, community. But I'm just so happy and glad that this is the first of its kind on Zoom like this. Okay, so but I appreciate everybody and this the convener and coordinator of this forum. This is one of the things that should have been done, within our Nigerian American communities, but it's always better to be late than never. So we are now here and we help each other as a community because who best to help us but ourselves? So my experience really coming to America in the last 26 years, for me, it's a little bit different in the sense that by the time I came, even before I came over here, I already I had my admission to be to come into to start my graduate program at Georgetown and at Howard. So it's just a matter of me choosing which one to go by. And so also I had my green card because my husband filed for me and my green card was already presented to me. I mean, not the actual card, but everything, already legal from Nigeria. So came over here, went to law school. Of course, I was already licensed to practice law in Nigeria and came here, went to law school. Georgetown Law was my decision. And it wasn't actually my decision, but my husband said since he was there at Howard, he had every of his education up until his PhD at Howard, that it would be good for us to diversify. And so I was ushered into Georgetown, and which is a very good choice also. I'm not saying anything bad about Howard, but it's always good to have that diversity. And I thank God that I did that. So when you're talking about having any racial experiences, with as a Nigerian American and as an African American, I would say that we experience exactly the same thing because all these racial injustices and inequities are based on the color of our skin. It's just because you are black. And so everything that our own people, as in as African American brothers and sisters, are going through, we experience it too. If you want to talk about employment, discrimination based on employment, I've been there. But the one that is poignant that I want to point out to us, just to start, because I know I'm supposed to be speaking for 5 minutes, is that point about even in Georgetown. So I know that when I was in Georgetown, there's this particular professor was my con law professor. He didn't want to hear from me because every time I open my mouth just to talk, because I still have African accent, and I'm sorry, even up until now, I don't want to change my accent. It doesn't make me intelligent or it doesn't take anything away from me. So long as I pronounce my words accurately and succinctly the way it's pronounced, I feel that I should be heard from. But he would not want to hear from me at all. And that actually cost me. a lot. So that's my intro. But I'm licensed to practice law here in the District of Columbia. In Maryland, I'm on inactive status, but I'm not a member of the bar, but I'm licensed to practice law. And also in New York, I'm licensed to practice law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Akinshola. I'd like to go over to you now, Mr. Oyibo. If you wouldn't mind giving us 5 minutes of your time to introduce yourself, let us know exactly who we're going to be meeting on the panel today and why this movement is of particular interest to you.
Sorry, before Mr. Oyibo speaks, I just wanted to confirm that my audio was now fine.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Apologies to everybody for that. It's
I don't even know which one is
okay.
Fantastic. Okay.
But I'm glad we're back on.
Great.
Mr. Oyibo, please.
Welcome back, Dr. Fabiyi.
Thank you.
So, hello everyone. My name is Charles Oyibo. I'm from Delta State and came to the United States about 21 years ago this year. I am a management consultant, so I work for one of the global consultancies, and I focus on strategy and transactions. My second hat has me involved in economic development policy, and this is an area that I'm very interested in. It's really questions about what drives development and how can we apply those sorts of thoughts to development. From the point of view of why is this important to me, I think that Black people around the world have generally not done a very good job of having a common unified platform to advance their agendas. So, Black people around the world, whether they're on the continent or in diaspora or in other places, are generally, broken up in terms of how we're able to pull our resources together to drive a common agenda. So I think this is a very important topic. This is a very timely topic to help drive the conversation around how can we create a common platform that really brings the Black agenda to the forefront. And the sooner we do this, the better for us. And I think there's an unrecognized power in doing that is going to clearly unfold itself once we begin to move on this path. So I'm very excited about these discussions, and I hope that we're able to translate it into something that takes it to the next level. On the front of personal experiences that might sort of highlight some of the sort of culture, racism, and those sorts of things. So I wouldn't say that I've necessarily personally experienced, the sort of overt police brutality that we see result in so many needless deaths in the United States. But one thing for sure is that, particularly for those that work in large multinational corporate environments, there are subtle, sort of racism that one experiences from, and it could be subtle from the point of view of cliques that form around certain races and exclusion from certain things that might, and then you have to try to find a way to navigate around those sorts of situations. I think there is, to be fair, a recognition of those sorts of issues, and I think there are well-meaning people that are seeking to try to bridge those gaps and remedy those issues, but those things continue to exist. The other thing that I do want to also point out, just from my own perspective, is just the sort of effects of systemic and historical and institutionalized racism, particularly in the United States of America, and the impact that has on things that we see, for example. So I live in the Burtonsville Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago, for example, And it's you know, Chicago is very racially divided, for example, and you can see the differences in terms of how different parts of the city gets taken care of. So even things like street cleanings, for example, the way resources are allocated to cleaning streets downtown or on the north side, you may not have that same kind of allocation to street cleanings on the south side. So for me, there's no description for those sorts of things other than to say it's an overtly racist thing, that my part of town is not as clean as the others. So anyway, I'll wrap up there, and I'll turn it back over to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much. So great to hear from you. Thank you, Mr. Oyibo. Next, I'm going to be going over to Mr. Adewusi. Mr. Adewusi, if you can hear me, if you wouldn't mind giving us 5 minutes of your time, explaining exactly who you are, what you do, and why this movement is of such interest to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Samuel Olubenga Adewusi. I migrated here many moons ago. I think 1981 to be precise. It was to get an education. You know, I've been here since. I've been saying that I was going to go back home, but I haven't gone back yet. In the meantime, I have been able to do a few things that were, you know, engaging the community. I am currently licensed to practice in Maryland and the District of Columbia. I am a member of the Federal Bar and a member of the U.S. Supreme Court. I became I joined Nigerian Americans, I believe this was in 2006, and I rose from the president of the chapter to a regional director to become the continental chairman from 2015 until 2017. I served one term on each of the positions, and now I am the president-elect for the Nigerian American Lawyers Association. So that is, I'm a father of 2 children, 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, whom I'm really, really proud of. And also, the reason why this movement is important to me is the fact that I would not call myself a serial protester because I will attend, events that I think is dear to my heart. For example, I've, marched, demonstrated in front of the Supreme Court for the right of everybody to be counted for census. I've also been there when, the young people were calling, for end to gun violence. I was there at the Million, Man March. So, this particular, movement is important to me because without, the work that's been done by our African American brothers and sisters, we will not be here today. There will be nothing. New York Times will not be able to write about Nigerian exceptionalism because there will be no there will be no place to do it. Also, we, especially we Nigerians, we, have, this tendency to call our African American, African American, cousins names. I was doing it before, but after I started reading the history of our people here, I find out that without them, this country will not even be built. There will be nowhere for anybody to come ahead and start running around and claiming that they are Americans or anything, because if you did work for 400 years unpaid, and without getting paid, that is a huge amount of investment to build any place. So basically, that is why this movement is very, very important to me, and this is the kind of experience that I've had regarding racism. It has to be with being stopped by the cops. I remember I was driving to visit a law school classmate of mine in Georgia, and I was stopped at a place in South Carolina. The guy didn't give me any reason why I was stopped, and fortunately, because I went to law school, I already learned how to deal with the police officers. So that saved my life. However, one of my law school classmates in the back of the car was thinking that I am a chump for being so, doing everything by the book while I was talking to the cops. And I was like, the guy doesn't care whether I just got out of law school. He will shoot me because he thinks I'm a black person. It wasn't until 2 years ago that this person called me and write me a separate stuff and said, listen, I now understand why you were, behaving that way when that officer stopped you. So basically, that is one of my experience out there. I have gone to the, to see doctors, to do some, what do they call those? Those, surgeries or, medical procedures. And these people wouldn't want to give me, a painkiller. And what do they call those things? I can't say the name now. And it's anesthetic. I think Dr. O can help me down there. Somebody wanted to take 4 of your wisdom tooth out, and they were not ready to give me anesthetic. And I was thinking, what do you think I am? The second time I wanted to do eye surgery, to do stuff in my eyeballs, one of the most sensitive areas. The guy was like, "Oh, you could do it without, without us giving you any painkillers." And I said, "Are you serious?" This is part of that medical, racism we are talking about, where they think that African people can can withstand more pain than any other people. So those are the kind of experiences that I face in this country, and we will talk more about it because I don't want to run, over my time. So I'll give my time back to Mrs. Onomusi. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I again want to apologize to everyone for that technological breakdown that we had. I suppose they can happen anywhere. But I want to thank everybody, the speakers, and all the folks that have joined for your patience so far, but to the speakers especially for the insights that you've provided in those initial 5 minutes. So a number of questions come to mind, and what we're going to do for the rest of the conversation is I will segue to a number of the things that you've raised. One statement that you made, and this is to Charles, Mr. Oyibo. So one statement that you made was that one of the problems that we have as Black people is that we don't seem to have a common agenda. So my question then is, what is the Black agenda? What is that unifying thing that all of us as Black people can rally around? Especially given the fact that even for us as Nigerians, I mean, almost everybody on this call is Nigerian American, or a Nigerian living here who, perhaps is not members of the Nigerian community, period. But even within our communities, we struggle to find a common ground. We find challenges in finding common purpose. What is the Black agenda? What is that thing that all of us, regardless of whether we're Nigerian Americans or African Americans or Caribbean Americans or whatever, and all of us within the Nigerian American community, regardless of where we're coming from or what groupings we belong to, what are those things that constitute a common Black agenda? That question is going first to Charles, but then I'll ask the question to the other panelists as well.
Okay, thank you. So the way I would think about it is that to the extent that the survival, right, of any given individual is tied to the or maybe put it differently, to the extent that the advancement, if you will, of a given individual is tied to that of the collective, I think the agenda is that survival in and of itself, or that advancement in and of itself. I don't think that there's necessarily a Black agenda that is somewhat distinct from a white or an Asian agenda. And so I think the major difference, though, is the fragmentation. So while other people that come to this country, for example, have a collectivist or a unified sort of approach to development and to advancing. I think that the challenge, at least based on my assessment, is that we tend to be more individualistic. And I mean, I know there are platitudes to saying that, you know, the African communities tend to be more collectivist, but I really think that we tend to think in terms of, now that I am here, how do I advance myself and my family, without any sort of thought about how do we create a common platform that can launch us and provide, again, the platform for the next generation. So maybe anecdotally, if you look at any given set of, you know, immigrant groups in this country, I think you'll find the basis for this sort of collectivist approach to things. So if you look at, you know, Asian groups, for example, some, you know, look at investments in franchises, and when new people come, they sort of show them the way. So whether it's Subway and Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins for Indian communities, or petrol stations or convenience stores, point is that there's more of a community approach to advancement, and I think we don't have that. And so I think about, you know, even the African communities, Nigeria, you know, we're broken along tribal, religious, and all other lines. I think about my own ethnic group. Whenever we form an association in the Americas, it always inevitably splits along sorts of fractures. And I've not really observed any scenario in which we've been able to create a common platform. So maybe to recap, I don't think the issue necessarily is a question of what is the Black agenda. I think by definition, the Black agenda is really the advancement of Black peoples in general. The issue is, why are we unable to create a platform to facilitate and enable that? And that's the question I think we ought to be asking ourselves and trying to find an answer to.
Okay, thank you very much for that insight. I will go to Dr. Opesanmi. So, Dr. Opesanmi, there are two things that I would be asking you to do. So the first is, you'd initially spoken to the group in the context of helping us understand what we would be doing on the day of the march from a safety perspective. But what we would be looking for you to do now would be, one, to provide the larger group with an introduction of, you know, yourself. You have your share of the 5 minutes. So because we've gotten an initial introduction, maybe an initial 3-minute overview to provide us with some perspectives. But what I would then like you to do is to piggyback on what Mr. Oyibo said, which is, and I think he said some really profound things, and he's absolutely right. There are immigrant communities that have come after we did. If I drive down to DC now, almost all the parking lots are owned, run, operated by people from African immigrant communities who came to the US long after we did. Why is it that we've not yet been able to find a way as a community? Yes, there is systemic racism. Yes, there are all those challenges, but at the same time, there are certain things that we can also do for ourselves. There are relationships we can have. There are enablements that we can provide. Franchises, as Mr. Oyibo said, maybe one individual may not be able to pull a franchise together, but a community acting in unison could potentially do that. Are those the types of things that we should even be considering? Or should we simply be focused as we are, you know, in terms of, you know, let's just focus on ourselves as individuals and what we're trying to do, and then collectively engage in matters political and leave matters commercial or matters that have to do with any type of collective financial advancement to the side? Dr. O, it's a lot of questions loaded into one, but the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I had my share, I still have my share of race issues in the US. I shared the last time I was on the forum that I went to a residency program where I was the Black ever resident in the program. I was never invited to a dinner or a hangout with my colleagues all the 3 years I was there in residency, and they did things together. They were civil to me in the hospital, but I had attendants who vowed that they would make sure I did not complete residency. But, you know, somehow, some way, I completed residency successfully. I also shared my medical school. I went to the Medical College of Pennsylvania in Philly. And when I went there, I was one of 11 minorities in the medical school. And that included Indians, African American, you know, I think we had one African American, we had me, and we had one Hispanic girl who was actually a year ahead of us, but, you know, joined us because she took off time to take care of her mother when she was ill. So I ran for class president, won, and the next year worked hard to get minorities into our medical school year class, and we had 30 minorities. And that continued till I left, but after I left, it was not continued. You know, I've been on Super Bowl. I have a few firsts, but Super Bowl ads from my UT Health Center residency program, because I was the only Black person, and Black is beautiful. So my color was important to showcase in the Super Bowl commercial that they had to do. And so I ended up being on Super Bowl the first time I was on Super Bowl commercial. So we all have stories. And it is right what Mr. Oyibo said, that we tend to be individualistic in our approach to surviving in the US. A tree cannot make a forest. We can do well individually sometimes, but when we come together and unite, we will be a stronger and formidable force. And that's what this team is about. That's what this forum is about, to bring us together, to make us stronger. If we don't work together, we cannot achieve the end that we hope for. If we don't work together, we will be going for this peaceful matches, and it will yield nothing. If we don't work together, we will not be reckoned with in the United States of America. Just look, for instance, Nigeria, the father of Africa, has no representative in the Senate. Is it that we don't have the brains or we don't have the know-how? Bring one person up. If that person is an Igbo person, Yorubas may say they are not supporting them. If they're a Yoruba person, the Igbos may say they're not supporting them. We need to work on our tribalistic ignorances amongst us and work together as one. And we need to work together with our African American colleagues. The last time I spoke, I invited some of my African American friends. They're excited, they're going to be at the walk. They already were planning to be at the walk. Some people will be coming out of state, all African Americans. We need to become one. Black is Black. The Jews bind together and they spend their money in their community. And today, they have a voice. We need to bind together and show that we actually contribute amazingly to this, to our communities and the country as a whole, and then we would have a voice. Until we do that, I doubt if we'll get anything done. In fact, after the match, you know, I've talked to Dr. Fabiyi briefly about the match is just the beginning. After the match, we need to start now talking about things we should be doing. I hope we all writing down ideas on things we need to do. I can mention some of the ones that have crossed my mind. For instance, in the line of what we're talking about, searching for and getting all organizations that are starting with Nigerian American organizations, starting with that, getting them together, getting a forum, having a website to put all these businesses in, so that if somebody needs something, they can go there and say, hey, I would approach this. I will do this. It's good for starters. Also, in there, we will see people who may merge. We may get grants. We see grants for something, we can put it out there. We will know the organizations that can benefit from these grants, and we can send it to them. We can empower ourselves financially and also empower ourselves by supporting each other. On this forum today, I bet Dr. Aguna is on here. She's my sister. She's one person who, Ngozi Aguna, I can call her day or night, and she can call me day or night. And we bind together to do anything and everything. We have done health fairs together, given to communities all over, and done things together. We bind together to achieve, but this is just us. And we belong to an organization, but we move things we need to move. I think we need to do that as a general community, and we will get a lot done. Like I said, a tree cannot make a forest. We need to stop this notion of, I want to be this, I want to be that in an organization. Let's bind together. Let's a stronger community by uniting. Thank you.
Dr. Malcolm, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
You're on mute. Okay, so
there we go.
Hopefully you can hear me now. Thanks. Dr. O, thank you very much for those insightful comments. We're stronger together. A tree by itself cannot make a forest. So I'm going to be going to Mrs. Akinshola, then followed by Mr. Adewusi. And before going to you, I will vary the question slightly. There is a Black agenda. What we're here for. We came here because we wanted to, a lot of us, first generation Nigerians came here, Nigerian Americans came here because we were looking for a place where we could fulfill our purpose, where we could take our talents and be unfettered in our pursuit of implementing those talents and finding a place to realize our potential. We've done that, and so here are the results of that effort. We are supposedly, it's not even supposedly, it's factual, that we are the one ethnic minority in this country, Nigerian Americans as a group, that have the highest educational outcomes. However, when you look at our economic impact, and then we have individuals that have been immensely successful, but as a collective, our median income as a community is only slightly higher than the average median, than the median income for America as a whole. And what it tells us is that in spite of all these academic achievements we've had, in spite of all these stellar achievements of our community members as individuals, we have still not, as a collective, been able to find that common American dream. We haven't. Because if we had, our median incomes would not be trending towards the average, because what our median incomes are showing as a whole across the community is that where our outcomes, our economic impact, our socio-political impact is actually not significantly higher than the average. Mrs. Akinshola and then Mr. Adewusi would follow. What concrete steps can we take as a community to ensure that we help in this country to create a society or to fight for the emergence of a society where we're not only talking about racial justice, we're not only marching, but we're also helping to create platforms that allow us to actually achieve a level of success that is commensurate with all of the hard work that we as a community put into things like education. So Mrs. Akinshola first, please take about 2 minutes to answer that question, and then Mr. Adewusi will go to you.
Okay,
close
Dr.
out.
Fabiyi,
yes.
Thank you. It's a very good question. And I'm glad that Dr. Opesanmi and Mr. Oyibo already alluded to some of the things that I would actually want to present. But they laid that ground foundation and it's very good, but I'm going to try and attempt to build upon them. So we're talking about how do we translate that to our collective wealth. Dr. Opesanmi and Dr. Oyibo, they've already succeeded in telling us the culture with which we Nigerians, we have, as in individualistic rather than collective thing, which actually leads into this collective community deficiency that we're talking about. Now, how can we translate this first in terms of commercial and in terms of politics? Because I know that you also asked that particular question before. So, you were talking about an individual can be as wealthy as the community, and it could also be the other way around. And I'll tell you why I said that. I said it to say that, like Dr. Opesanmi said, there is one tree does not make a forest. Yes, that is true. Because if you're standing on your own, we've all made it individually, but we can be stronger collectively. And how do we do this? Now, why don't we patronize each other? When you patronize me as a lawyer or something that I have expertise in, you are not only helping me as my family or myself as a person, you are also helping your own community to develop. Because if you patronize me, I will also go around to turn around and patronize whoever is in my community, and that money will circle around my community before it goes out onto another community, which is what we heard that the Jews, they do. They say their money or their wealth, circulate 6 times or 8 times around before it gets out of their community to benefit others. That's one. We collaborate. When we collaborate, let me make an example of lawyers, because that's what I really know. I'm also a member of the Nigerian American Lawyers Association, So, for example, let's say I know something about child abuse and neglect or domestic violence, which is what I know, okay? Now, somebody who in need of a criminal lawyer came to me, oh, well, I don't do this, but I have somebody that can do it for you. We don't attempt to refer people out of our community. I will be calling on Dr. Adewusi, Mr. Adewusi, or actually referring that person over to Mr. Adewusi or somebody else in my community. And this is one thing that the Nigerian American Lawyers Association tried to do when the organization was established. This is so we will help each other. But the thing is, we don't trust each other. When people come to you to ask you, especially with our immigration cases, people come to you, they want to brainstorm with you. They had already talked to a Jew or a white or somebody who is not even in your community. Meanwhile, those people they actually went to, they're not better than Nigerian American attorneys. We as the organization NALA, Nigerian American Lawyers Association, we ensure and put it upon ourselves that anyone that takes a case must ensure that he or she is an expert in that field. Don't undertake anything that you can't follow through or do to a logical conclusion. And of course, these are legal issues. Attorneys are not supposed to be promising a client the outcome, of the case. So that is one. Then if it is franchise, let's talk about it. Let's keep it within our community. And there's something that has been said before. Why do we not come together? Yeah, we can come together as Black people not even as Nigerians, because number one, we talk about religion. Oh yeah, he's not from my. We also talk about tribe. She's not from my village. Oh, I cannot coalesce after or with her. But if we tend to step down and let all the religion, the sectarianism, and the tribalism, if we let go of that and come as one people, as Nigerians. Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. I'm strong. I have I'm okay. I'm thriving all by myself as an individual. But let's seek for our common good, because until we seek for that common good, this is why we here as one can never thrive. And that also translates even home, because that is exactly what happened in Nigeria now. So on the continent, what are we doing? Even politically, we know some people who are interested in the political arena. I know I'm a policy person. I don't want to be a politician, but I kind of dance around the policy arena. But for me, I would support someone who is from my community. But why and how do we do this? I do this by vetting you. I just want to hear from you. You know, let's vet us. I have some things that I could run down. First, of course, we have to have
Mrs.
of
Maybe
purpose.
Mrs. Akinshola,
Okay.
if we can stop for now, we'll come back to that. But thanks
Okay.
for. Okay, so I really I'm excited by this, because we're starting to throw out, all the speakers are throwing out very, very specific things that we can do. And as you all know, one of the things that we've begun talking about, and Dr. Opesanmi alluded to this, is the fact that we need to start thinking beyond the march. Yes, we march, and then what else? And I like the fact that we're getting to some granular items about what those next things are that we will begin to do, that we can do as a community. Mr. Adewusi, can you please also, I know a lot has been said, perhaps that might overlap with some of the things you wanted to, but are there any aspects of this conversation that you would want to shine a little bit more light on?
Thank you. I think, like you said, a lot of stuff, a lot of ground has been covered. You asked a question: what is the Black agenda? And I think Dr. Oyibo clearly said that Black people don't want anything more than any other people, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nothing more, nothing else. Now, the issue we face is that since the founding of this, country, African Americans have not been allowed to enjoy their life. Their liberties have been taken away from them, and they have not been allowed to pursue happiness. Now, how do we go about it? People have been working very hard. That is why we are here today, because of the struggle of the people who've gone before us. Now, when the struggle started, especially in 1968, if you watch, Eyes on the Prize, the main focus was on, a political, getting into political office, holding elective offices. I think what that experience has shown seriously was that political office does not necessarily translate into economic, power. And that is the consequences of what we are facing today. That despite if you look across this country, you will see I'm not talking about Nigerians now. I'm just talking generally about African Americans across the board. You will see that we hold offices nearly at the state level, at the lower level. We are not talking about the federal government now. In some of these states where we have predominantly African American people, yet their lives have not been impacted, because and as a result of that economic positions that we hold or that our cousins had. Now the issue we face now is just like everybody's been saying before. How come that African Americans, especially we who second or first generation African Americans, like Nigerians, come from all over part of the world. How come we are not doing well? There was an Indian lawyer that I met some time ago, and he asked me, if you look at some of these Holiday Inn hotels now, majority of them are owned by Indians. And he told me the kind of system, because you asked for granular details. This is where I want to go a little bit now. He said what they do is that they pull their resources together first and help one person to, acquire, the first hotel. And once that is done, what happens is that the money, all resources, that's been done to help that particular person, just like an Isuzu, but only now for investment purposes, is now shifted to the next person and help that person along. They already have a lawyer. The lawyer has a template. The lawyer knew how much it's going to cost. The lawyer knew, where, and they have people who are constantly sourcing for hotels that needed to be sold. I was on the way to Texas, and I stopped at least 2 different hotels, and both of them were owned by Indians. This is on the way to Texas, we are talking about across country. So basically, when we are talking about this, it's like we can do as much as we can do right now, but the political power by itself, alone by itself, is not enough for us to do much without the economic power that comes with it. So now, how come we haven't gotten the economic power? Now, that is going to take us back to the time when we have, if anybody watched this movie called Rosewood, where they had, people, especially in Tulsa race, race riots, where our people had their own Black Wall Street, and they were totally, bombed out and chased out and murdered because they dared to have their own economic thing. Of course, there is another, section of that people didn't even realize. In Philadelphia, there is an organization called, I believe it is, spelled, I think it is Mood or something like that. It's the M-O-U-D. They were dropped. They decided to live by themselves. They were staying in their own community and say, listen, we are not gonna, worry about you. Just leave us alone. Let's do whatever we want to do. Guess what? They had a Black police officer, chief police officer in the city of Philadelphia that dropped a bomb, daylight, on those people in Philadelphia. People usually, so now how do we, that was what I said about the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We want to, pursue this. How come we as African Americans and our ancestors who've gone before us, ourselves, and our peers and the people coming behind us, how do we now make sure that this American experience allow our people to say, okay, you have liberty, you can pursue life, you can pursue liberty, and you can pursue happiness without interference from the same government that is supposed to protect you? To me, that is the most important Black agenda. How do we now go about and say, listen, we want to build economic power. We want to do, because our people can do more than what we did, what that enclave that we built in Tulsa, in that state. We can do more than that. But the question is, if you are not left alone to even catch your breath and be able to strategize, build your own community, look after your own people, is it possible to actually do anything? So our Black agenda should be, in these United States, how can we get either the government to stay off our backs? We are not asking, majority of African Americans don't need the government to do anything for them. But how do we now make sure that this same government does not, enact racist policy or allow racist police to kill our people and not to be able to, pursue life, liberty, and happiness? That is our Black agenda that I can think of right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that contribution. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that is pulled right of America's founding documents. And Mr. Adewusi is right that it's been almost 300 years since those founding documents were put together. And we're still on that path towards ensuring that the black and brown races in this country are able, in an unfettered manner, to pursue life, to pursue liberty, and to pursue happiness without let and without hindrance. And so I'm really grateful for the very deep granularity that we're going into. I think a number of things have been said, a number of important points have been made. Mr. Namusi, I will now take, before we go into the next session, can you please read some of the comments? I can see that comments are flying, some of the really, really good ones. So please, can you just pick a number of comments and share them with the group?
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, if I'm not reading out your comments, please, it's not because it's not profound or important. It's just that today really has been a proliferation of comments. So I'm just going to try to get through them as quickly as possible. Starting right at so we've still got more people joining every second. Thank you for those sharing the flyers. Julia Ugoji says, this is everyone's song each time. I believe she was referring to this idea, this individualistic idea, and the fact that we don't stick together. What is the problem? We've identified our problems, but the question is, what is holding us? William Etty says we should be supporting each other, connecting on social media, harvesting pools of talents. There are lots of talented and achieved individuals individually. Collectively, we are a force. So when we kept talking about success and wealth and income and how we're all successful individually but not coming together, Tolu Omoba had this to say: is income the only basis of success? What about ownership? What about longevity and quality of life? What about these things? Okay. There's a Jay Akinshola that has been communicating with me privately, telling me, I believe the summary of what the person is trying to say is that we need statistics for each state. We need data. We need to include demographic data, educational status, income status, and many more. This data helps us to really understand where we are, who we are in each state, and then begin to amass forces accordingly. Daniel Buje says, our respective culture has tinted our decisions to work together once such a person is not from the same clan or indeed the same religious group. We have allowed ethno-religious sentiments to water down our interest to collaborate. Olayinka Dan Salami says, certainly coming together is the answer to our problems. However, I find this easier said than done. The question we must all answer is, what efforts are you or your organization making to work together for common purpose or purposes? There are many Nigerian organizations out there that we can work with to achieve the goals espoused here. Make it a point of duty to join those organizations: OAN, NAPAC, Nigerian Nurses, Nigerian Lawyers Association, Nigerian Physicians, etc. Bear with me, still admitting people. There is a difference of opinion though, and I really just wanted to read this out, just so that if this is something that you would like to talk about, then please by all means shed some light on it. Mama Akpata says, there is no such thing as a Black agenda, which is not to suggest that one cannot be constructed. Black people do not consist of a homogeneous group. Read Tommy Shelby's book, We Who Are Black. Comparison with other groups like the Jews is misleading. Nigerian individualism is not a problem. Stronger solidarity emerges from strong individualism, just as strong individuality emerges from a strong solidarity. We should not underestimate the divide and rule of racism, so let us not flog too much this lack of solidarity or community spirit. We really have got to be careful with our diagnosis of the problem. Nigerians in the US are not doing badly at all. They do not carry with them what I describe as the weight of slavery on their minds. The rest is simply making the connections. So there are people who are saying that maybe we're overflogging this need for solidarity. Maybe we are doing okay given the amount of time we've been in this country, as in relation to the length of time that Black people have been in this country, or indeed slavery or this oppression has been here. I'm going to stop here. Just to, there's a lot. I mean, the chats are
I mean, if it's okay, I mean, if I could have
sorry,
maybe sorry.
Okay, Mr.
If I could have maybe a few moments to respond to that last comment, because I think there's a risk of framing the issue very wrongly, and I think the issue here isn't to front load the conversation as, you know, what is the Black agenda. I think framing it in that way, again, you know, imply an agenda to what end? Why? What is the point of it? What are we trying to do with an agenda? I think the framing of it is that there appears to be a problem generally, which is that Black people at home in diaspora are in dire straits. We've got the short end of the stick. You can apply any other sort of euphemism to describe what Black people face. So then the question becomes, what ought we to do about it? And I think in framing it in that way, we then say, well, it appears that part of the issue is that we're unable to pull our resources together to solve a problem. We're approaching things as individuals, and if you look at other people, they appear to be successful because they appear to be pulling their resources. And whether those resources are financial or cognitive or whatever else, right? Even if it's 5 people get together, buy a rundown house and get hammers and saws and repair it themselves, that's pulling resources. The word synergy comes to mind, right? Synergy implies that you add 1 + 1 and you get 4, right? So if I go it alone, I get certain outcomes. You go it alone, you get certain outcomes. If we go at it together, the outcomes we achieve are greater than the sum of the individual outcomes we achieve individually. So the point here isn't that, you know, solidarity in and of itself is just something that is inherently a superior concept than individualism. No, that's not the point. The point is that there appears to be, and if you look at the experiences of, you know, everyone's talked about the Jewish, but the Chinese, look at the Chinese communities, there are people that, and we talk about the sort of multiply effects of $1 in the Chinese community. There are people that live in the Chinese community and don't leave the Chinese community because everything they need is in their banks, schools, hospitals, and everything. So they built a community that can serve their purposes. And this goes back to the point raised earlier about education. So yes, we have all the degrees in the world, but again, if you have degrees that are not plugged into ecosystems and platforms, it doesn't, that's precisely why our average income is roughly the average nationally. Our education doesn't translate into anything. So what does this all say? We need to think about solidarity as a tool to achieve an end. And that end being, well, part of the tool being building platforms that can enable us, launch us as a people. We're diffused, even our purchasing power is diffused. There's no sense of what is the Black purchasing power because we're everywhere. So I want to make sure that we're framing this correctly. To the other point about even school, right? And we talk about, you know, we go to school, when our incomes are not commensurate to that. Part of it too is we're conflating potentially an education, a degree, a diploma with what society finds to be valuable. Give you an example. In our society, we think about a plumber, an electrician, as someone who didn't have opportunity in life, went to go learn a trade. I'll tell you right now, no plumbers that probably earn as much as any, you know, whatever, professional person that went to get a master's degree. Plumbers that earn 6 figures because they have their union jobs, they can do side gigs, they earn a tremendous amount of money. So we think about value and what society pays for it differently than in society we live in. We look at a plumber and we say, you know, you were an orphan, you didn't get sent to school, so you went to go learn a trade. So we have to think about this differently. And that brings me to my last point, information. Part of the platform and part of the synergies I alluded to previously is sharing of information. A lot of us are trying to reinvent the wheel, right? So if we have platforms where we're able to let people know that, hey, you know, here are the things, the information we've gathered over the past 60 years as in this country. Here are the things you need to do to be successful, and we help you get there. right? Because otherwise I come at the age of 18 and I just kind of muddle through. And then by the time I'm 40, I'm like, oh man, I wish I knew what I know now, what I knew then. Well, why couldn't I help someone that's 18 coming in today, right? So really it's about building platforms that enable us to build economic power, right? That enables you to then translate that into political power. I really believe that for us to get political power, you need economic power. The only way to get political power without economic power, particularly in this country, well, in any context, is if you're trying to be a revolutionary and you're trying to overturn the status quo. You really want to do it in an incremental and gradual way and do it through the system, you need economic power. Get power, you need a platform.
Thank you. Yeah.
Platform, you need solidarity. So I'll pause and turn it over.
All right. Thank you. Sorry.
This is.
Hold on. Please.
Okay.
Sorry,
thanks.
please. Who's that? Is that Mr. Adewusi?
Yes. I think I can hold on. I will let you go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. If it's related, if it's a follow-on to what Mr. Oyibo just said, please just go ahead, and then once you're done, we'll start going into something else. Go ahead, please. Yeah, it's gonna be 2 minutes. I think it is Mr. Oyibo already did great justice to this subject. But I just didn't want to let that issue go about strong individualism. The question is, what do you get out of it? If you look at what you will have to look at what you've had and how has it been working well for you. Nigerians first started migrating to this country in large numbers during the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And we've been here with our strong individualism. What did we get out of it? So on that note, I'm going to stop. Thank you. Thank you very much for that insight. So my perspective is that strong individualism and a sense of cooperation they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, right? So for instance, a lot of what so in this country, we're in one of the most individualistic nations in the world. Yet, America is also one of those nations where people do the most cooperation that I've ever seen anywhere in the world, right? We're very individualistic, but then you have movements, whether it's on the political side, whether it's on the social justice side, whether it's on the economic side, there are people that are pooling resources together. If you go online now, there are platforms that are purely economic platforms where people are basically coming up with ideas and saying, look, I have a business, I have an idea, can somebody support this? They don't know each other. They have no background with each other. They're all purely individualistic. But then everybody recognizes that if we're to get anything done, pooling of resources is the easiest way to make it happen. So capital, the access to capital. So when we've mentioned a number of communities, when people in those communities come together and pool their resources together, they're not doing it because that is just the way things are done. They're doing it because in this country, there are some inherent intrinsic challenges that we might have getting access to capital. Maybe those, a lot of us that have tried to establish businesses, we know it's not easy to just walk into a bank and walk out of that bank with a loan. And if we're not able to get that loan because we don't have that long history, because we don't have all of the collateral, because, perhaps there are instances of institutional and systemic racism that might prevent us from getting the same types of loans that our colleagues of a different hue might get, well, maybe banding together and pooling resources together might actually allow us to do that business. It doesn't make us any less individualistic. In fact, it is because we're very individualistic, but we understand that the benefit to one is also a benefit to the others, is what makes us move forward. So for instance, this notion that we've described about how our Indian American brothers are behaving here is no different, for example, in my mind, to what we would do, for instance, with the apprenticeship system amongst our Igbo brethren. as Mr. Adewusi said, it's no different to the Esusu approach. That is a uniquely African approach, where in a marketplace, I understand that my 200 naira may not do anything for me if I was spending it. But if I band together with 10 more people, that 2,000 naira can be sufficient for me to get into a new line of business. So I think there are really some interesting things that we can build upon. The principles are there. Many of these principles, again, in terms of cooperation and banding together as a community, are uniquely African. We've always done this. The question is, how do we do it? In fact, I'll tell you a personal story of mine. I have a group of friends here in the DMV area. We'd always, we've known each other for years. And it was not until about I believe it was 2 years ago, that we were getting together at one of the normal social events we get together at. And then somebody threw out the question, guys, we've known each other for this long. We're all friends. We're doing individual things in our own individual careers. We're doing well. But how is it that we've actually never come together to talk about business, to talk about pooling resources together, to do things together that we might not be able to do individually? And for the last 2 years, that group has been doing an Esusu-like contribution. Are we individualistic? Yes, we all are. But do we also recognize and understand? And I think we came to that realization by having this type of conversation, pointing to other communities and what we were seeing those communities do within a very short period of time of being here, and saying, you know what, we actually need to think about ways of beginning to leverage these types of things within our community itself. So I think we can marry those together. I think we can be both individualistic, but also understand that there's power in the collective. How we make it happen is the challenge that I believe all of us would have to figure out together. What I'll do now is we're going to go into the final portion of today's conversation, and then we'll go back. So I'll go back to all the speakers. Just so you're prepared, I'm going to be starting with you, Mrs. Akinshola. And what I'm looking for you to help us understand is, what are those things, if you were to come up with 2 or 3 critical things that you believe we would need to do as the next steps? So we understand that political engagement, I don't think there's a question in anybody's mind that we have to be politically involved. That's the easy part. But what are those next steps, beyond the march? What are those next steps that we should be involved in order to ensure that we as a community of Nigerian Americans in this country, we pull our weight, that the impact we make is as large as the size of our feet and not the size of the shoes that we might be forced to wear, that we are having the right impact here in the US, but also that we're having impact politically in a way in the US that can also perhaps spill over into what is going on in Nigeria. So I'll just give you, so please take 3 minutes and just let us know what your thoughts are about what are those things as a community that you believe we need to be focused on, the most critical things that we should face in order to have political impact, in order to begin to ensure that there is not only racial justice, but we create an environment that allows us to realize our fullest potentials. So I'll go to Mrs. Akinshola, then Mr. Adewusi will follow, then I'll go to Mr. Oyibo, and Dr. Opesanmi will then close out that conversation. Mrs. Akinshola, please.
Dr. Fabiyi, thank you. Okay, so those things that I think that we need to be doing even after the march that we're supposed to be, that is scheduled for us to do on the 28th. I would say, of course, we've all highlighted the political engagement. And for even that political engagement piece, there are steps and precepts that we have to follow. And for me, I'm of the opinion that to organize and unite, ourselves in terms of one purpose. We don't have, like, we ask ourselves, what is Black people's purpose, or what do Black people, what is the state of the Black world, or what is that thing that Black people want? For me, I know that Black people, and certainly Nigerian Americans, and specifically me, I don't need anything extra or privileged other than what my counterpart, white American, or anybody out there has. I just want to be treated as a human being, and I want to be remunerated based on my skills and experience and expertise, at workplace, And also, I want to say that talking in terms of having a cause, we unite after a cause. What is that cause that we will be united after? When we know that, okay, we need to get away from religion, from ethnic background, from tribe, from whatever, and then have that umbrella of, okay, we have two vital political organizations in this country. Most of us vote Democrat, and some people vote Republican. And by all means, I don't even quarrel about that, because we need to be represented in both political parties. That is how we can leverage who we are and our voice. But of course, we need to make sure that we're going after that party who really truly would seek after our interests. And what's our interest? Of course, some of it is, for some of us, it's immigration. How do we get legalized and stuff like that? We have the lawyers. Who do we refer to? How do we go about it? And if the lawyer, if he or she is something that is not supposed to be doing, which structure do we go back to talk to? Of course, there's the bar council, but why don't you go and talk to his colleague or the organization that he or she belongs to first before you launch out to bar council? Because I can tell you that a lot of our attorneys are being yanked off of their bar licenses just because of something that actually will be a slap on the wrist for someone who is not a Nigerian American. Just because we are Nigerians, that has put us in a red zone. So we need to be mindful of that. I'm not saying cover up immoralities. I'm a woman of integrity. I want people to do things the right way. But if not, before you launch out to the upper echelon where this is like there is no turning back, talk to your community. Let's talk to them and see what we can do. So that's also empowering the community. And now we're talking about employment. Who is doing what? What did you study? Where do you want to work? Let me see your resume. How is it done? Who can help me doing this? We have so many expertise as Nigerians. Nigerians are everywhere. But are we helping each other? That is one thing, and we have to help each other. Also, in terms of healthcare, who is a nurse? I mean, we're talking about even educating ourselves in our political arena. You're talking about accessing capital, and you started it from your group that you've been together with for like over 10, 15 years. And thank God the red light just went off, and somebody raised the issue of pooling resources together. That is a big one, and that is what we need to do. There are so many of our Nigerians who are in the capital and banking business and commercial real estate banking organizations that we can actually put in a group that can help us in that arena. And this, of course, we'll be having seminars and workshops and pooling our resources together. And of course, if we have that unity of purpose, perhaps when we are able to help each other here, we will be able to launch out even into Nigeria. something came that I can tell you, something that is of private issue, but I can share it out here because I know that somebody who is very intimate and close to me was building a house sometimes in Nigeria, and he's been doing it for years, and he will go, you know, with 2 naira, 3 naira. He does his thing, comes back and all that. But there was this year that he actually experienced another Nigerian who went home, and he, together with 2 other people, making 3, they purchased like 3, 4, 5, 6 plots, and they pooled their resources together to build homes. Look at that strength. For somebody doing one thing, yeah, you are as good as, you know, you're as strong as your money can buy. But what if you now pull together, you are able to build 6, 7 houses, and each one of you have one each? You know, and then the other you rent out or lease out. That is still bringing wealth to those 3 people. But we're now talking about translating it over here. It can work. We have real estate brokers, we have real estate agents, we have mortgage brokers who can help us in that arena. Nigerians, trustworthy people who we can partner with, who we can collaborate with, who we can team up with, and who we can actually sit and learn from. You know, that is one. Now, if we're talking in terms of political peace, you know, I know in the last 2 or 3 years we've had a lot of our friends, Nigerians, who have campaigned, you know, wanting to hold one office or the other. I know that I always avail myself, you know, anytime I have to help people to campaign and all that. But one thing that I want to say about that is, for us to be able to coalesce after or with that person, we need to be sure to vet that person. And it's something we can do. We vet our candidate, and then we go after that candidate. Now, under what platform are we doing this? This is a very good platform that we have started. We can take it a top notch. The next level is, let's have a legal structure. Let's do things accordingly. Let's be compliant with the law of the land, because it's sort of out there that Nigerians, they are 419ers, you know, they don't do things the right way. They, you know, but let's not play to the narrative negatively. You know, let's get organized, let's get the legal structure going. So, and then we are compliant. We identify who these leaders are, who have interest in being maybe a local politician, or maybe a delegate or something. Now, once we've vetted you, you introduce
please,
yourself
if you can begin to round up. This is
okay.
It's okay. Thank you.
Yes, you introduce yourself to us. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. Ask us. Don't take us for granted. Some of us who are even carrying these posters who want to be voted for, we don't know you. When we know you, you are just coming to talk to us or hang out with us because you want us to support you. After we supported you, you are gone. We don't see you again. You don't even have anything in common with us other than you have Nigerian name, you know. So do you really know us? Do you know our culture? Do you know our issues? Introduce yourself to us, hang out with us, communicate with us. And then, of course, we abandon tribalism. We renew our minds, you know. We seek after honesty, integrity. We unite, we pray with, you know, together. This is me, I pray a lot. So, and I have to throw it out there because we also need to pray for those our candidates, you know, mentally, psychologically, physically. They need us, we need each other. And we volunteer. We volunteer on boards, local boards. We become membership on our local boards and county boards and committees, because when we put ourselves out there, they know we are there. They can't pass us over or push us over. They try sometimes, but if we're there, then they will be forced to reckon, with us. I know that we do this at the African continent level, because I'm a member. I used to be one of the members in the Pan-African Diaspora Women's Organization, which was chaired by the ambassador Arikana Shiombori, and she used to do that. I chaired the legal sector, but we did it beautifully. We can do it. We can replicate this even at the Nigerian level. And there is an African that we can replicate what their structure and bring that to the Nigerian level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for that. I can see this is an issue you're very passionate about, but we're very grateful for the granularity as well, because we've been having conversations, but there's nothing as powerful as having actual steps, the actual next steps that we need to take. So please, we're now moving on to the next panelist. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I really want to commend, Councillor Akinshola for, that submission. My submission, I'm going to try as much as possible to see how I can just, tie everything in a neat bow. If you look at one of those things that somebody mentioned before, is the fact that we usually, pushes us away from each other, like a centrifugal force that pushes us away from coming together and working with each other. The first one that I can think of is lack of trust. How do you trust your brother? It doesn't matter whether your brother is from the northern part of Nigeria, the southern part of Nigeria, or Christian or Muslim. How do you trust them that when you guys do business together, that everything will be okay? That this person will not shaft you. That is the first thing that we have to find a way. I don't have an answer for it today, because this is totally beyond the scope of this discussion. So I'm not going to dwell too much on that, but to put it on the table. How do we now start looking at that, fundamental lack of trust, and how can we build it together with all of us in our community? That's number one. Number two, I'm going to piggyback on what Councillor Akinshola spoke about. Yes, we can support our political political candidates, vet them and everything. But one of those things that we also have to do is that we haven't I mentioned economics, the economic impact, before. What I meant by that is that this is, yes, people will say, yes, this is a free country, but I can tell you, nothing is free. You need money. If you look at how much money has been spent on election, even at a local level, you will totally be amazed. We cannot support any candidates without having a fund, a way to create a fund and have a pool of fund that will say, listen, this person is running. Is it going to be something that we Nigerians are going to start doing and say, listen, every quarter, any Nigerian that belongs to this association that we are going to create, or this group we are going to create, can they contribute $50 every quarter or $100 every quarter, or people who have more can do so? And we will have that money. This will be totally different from individual contribution, to support any of those political candidates, but will be something that belongs to us. That say, listen, you are running. It doesn't matter what, what you are running about, and your manifesto, your program and your policy is something that directly impacts us as Nigerian or people of African descent. We will support you. So that is one of those things. I mean, it would be also because we are talking about creating a pool, a pool of fund for that kind of political activity. But it should be also come with creating a political action committee that says, listen, political action committee, apart from fundraising, also will be able to lobby on the Capitol Hill at the state level and say, listen, this is what we want, this is what our community needs, and this is how we can do so. So creating a pool of fund, a political fund to support our candidates, and then creating a political action committee to back it up. That's another thing. The next thing that I can think of is that we do not have something we call knowledge and skill pool. When I say that, it is very, very important. I will give you an example. I don't know if Prince Tanu is here. The last time we went down to Nigeria to do an ICT program, Prince Tanu, went online and, find, like about almost, 2 gigabytes of information on, information technology and gave it freely to people in Nigeria. How do we now say, listen, in this particular country, what kind of information do our people need? Do we have that kind of knowledge pool where any Nigerian can come into this? Listen, I'm a new Nigerian here. I don't know anybody. I don't know where to go. What can I do? Can I go online and search and see whether somebody has had this kind of problem before and how can it be solved? To me, that is one of those things that we need to, and that, if we have a knowledge pool, but it comes also with a, that knowledge pool also comes with a skills pool, pool, so that that in your state, in your local Nigerian tax person, there is a Nigerian doctor, there is a Nigerian that does this and do that, so that you can turn to them first, and if you cannot find them, then you can move outside of our community. So that is another thing. Another thing that we, I'm going to wrap up just now. What we find out is that we went to an event. It's a Nigerian Americans, convention last year in Houston, Texas. And one of the, one of the, invited guests told us that, listen, we have a minority set aside in Houston, in Houston County, that if you have a minority engineering firm, they should be able to, put, their heart in the apply for this grant and get this particular contract. He was talking about nothing less than $10 million. Guess what? Majority of us Nigerians at that event, we do not have any engineering, any engineering firm. And I know that in the state of Texas, in Harris County, where Houston is located, we have more than, I cannot say, probably 40 or 50 civil engineers. But guess what? None of them has ever said, listen, why don't we go ahead and set up an small business administration, SBA, supported or approved engineering firm to go after this kind of contracts. These are some of the things that we need to do, and if they cannot do so, if those engineering firms, medical firms, individual, engineers and individual doctors and individual, skills professionals cannot do this, set up this corporation for themselves, they should look out to people like Nigerian, Lawyers Association. It doesn't cost much to say, listen, how much does this do to set up an, a small business admin backed, a small firm? How much does it cost to just go ahead and get DUNS, which is, numbers that you need to get to be able to, apply and get, contracts at the state and the federal level. Those are the things that are, for me, that I can think of right away that we can start working on that would, push us to the next level. Thank you very much, and I'm going to stop here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Those are Mrs. Akinshola and now Mr. Adewusi. You're just building insights on insights, providing deep granularity. Thank you so much for those contributions. Mr. Oyibo.
Yes.
Can you please build on?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'll start with maybe a quote, a small quote from a U.S. architect that lived in the 1800s, died in the early 1900s. There's a quote attributed to him. He said, "Make those little plans. They have no magic to stare men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble, logical diagram once recorded will never die." So I'll pause there. It goes on. And I think, the first maybe thing to do here is to take a step back and establish for ourselves a vision that is grand. Because I think there is a very sort of bottoms up way of thinking about this potentially that says, let's do a susu and let's do, build a house and let's do this other thing, which is good, right? Because I think we need to think about these things in two tracks. But I think there's another track that says we need to think about what does, to your point about a Black agenda, what does a Black community that is thriving, that is verdant, that is healthy, what does that look like? Where does that exist today? how can we model that if it doesn't exist today, and how can we build that, and what does it take? Someone mentioned the Black Wall Street in Tulsa. Well, there's a reason why the racist folks back then tore it down. They understood the importance of a Black Wall Street and a community that was vibrant, that had residential aspects, that had commercial aspects, that had schools, that had hospitals, and all these other things. There's a reason they tore it out, and the reason they tore that down was because they understood the implication of owning capital and owning the basis for wealth creation. And I think that's where we have to start if we're to think big, is, and not to again detract from the bottom-up approach. I think there's a dual, parallel, top-down approach we need to think about in terms of how do we build big plans that can enable us arrive at a place where we can speak of Black communities that thrive. And I mean, what comes to my mind is I think about Chinatown, right? Every big city has a Chinatown. There's no reason why we couldn't have townships like that, or small villages like that, that are self-sufficient, where even your cops are people from your community. Ultimately, the reason why Black people and Black communities are being seem like they're being by an occupying force is because you're being policed by an other. We have to think about building holistic communities that includes these sort of community policing, people that have an impact on your education policy and other policies that impact your life are people that have a vested interest in those communities. For me, most things derive from a development lens. I really think that, coming at it from a political angle in the short term is quite laudable, and we should do it, but we should also back that up with a development perspective of how do we develop the infrastructure and the capital to do this. And for me, from a tactical perspective, the way to do that is to think about how we can create an organization that thinks about how do we then raise capital as part of that organization. And that capital then becomes the basis for building the kinds of communities I'm describing. So those kinds of platforms would include considerations around how do we think about banking, right? And the ownership of the flows of capital through banking. How do we have decisions around the allocation of capital to different things, which is also related to banking in the sense of, being able to raise capital. So I say all of this to say that, yes, we should continue to do our bottoms up. Let's build from the grassroots and let's engage politically, but we should also think about grand visions and build the platforms to get there. One thing I also wanted to note before I wrap up was the question of trust. This comes up all the time. When we talk about Nigerians, why don't we do things together? It's because we don't trust each other. Well, it turns out that thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people engage in transactions every day that don't know each other, have never met each other. How do they do those things? How do people engage in real estate transactions remotely, right? I've never seen you, but I'm able to wire you 6 figures to purchase property from you, and that title gets exchanged or transferred to me. Well, managing trust where there seems to be a deficit of trust is simply a process of developing systems of controls and accountability. We need to make sure that, we're not going to say, yeah, this is my brother, so here, go and do this, take the money and go and do it. No, that's not how it works. We build systems of control to make sure that people don't have access to things they shouldn't have access to, and we build systems of accountability. We can't let the trust deficit stand in the way of building these kind of platforms. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Oyibo, for those very insightful contributions. We can go bottoms up, but we should also have grand visions that we can stand behind and that can, difficult as they might be, ultimately that's where we're trying to get to. And so we should begin. My summary of your contribution is that we should begin thinking in those grand terms because it can help frame what it is we're trying to achieve. and provides us with a vision of what the destination looks like. I think vision is absolutely crucial and absolutely important. So thanks for that contribution. We'll now go to
Can I
Dr.
say something
Opesanmi.
quickly?
Please, we need to go to Dr. Opesanmi, and
Okay.
then if we still have some time after that, we'll do that. Dr. Opesanmi, please.
Thank you. This is about Black Lives Matter. And I appreciate all my panelists. I've learned so much. You all are awesome. However, if we don't look at the African Americans, the ones who built this country, if we think we can do this by ourselves and move on, I think we would have failed and maybe not achieve our goals. See, there's a saying that if you destroy the family unit, you would destroy a race. The African American race has been tackled from the family structure. Baby mothers, baby fathers, no father in the home, imprisoning males, and children having no fathers, no mentors, and stuff like that. We need to, part of our roundtable, when we complete this race on the 28th, should be how to revitalize the African American communities in different areas. Education is key. We're talking about economic strength. Without economic strength, we cannot achieve anything. I agree with my panelists. However, education is the core. I won't expatiate on that because we discussed that to some extent before. I think we can dialogue on that later. Education is important. Individually, some of us have education, but believe it, not all of us do. And the African American community too needs to be educated. See, when you are stopped by a police officer, all the police officer sees is black. Until you open your mouth, sometimes even when you open it, they don't know the difference. So we need to include them in how we can structure and, you know, make our lives valuable. Politically, we have to get involved. And we started, yes, but we're not anywhere near there. And we are so behind in the race. We have a Somalian in the Senate. We have a Eritrean in the Senate. We don't have a Nigerian. We don't have anybody in the House. Yes, there was a poll question asking if we would impact the US and also Nigeria if we have people in the right places. Yes, we will. We need to elect our people as judges so that right judgments will be done. We have political organizations. I appreciate lawyer Adewusi talking about how to raise funds. We already have those organizations. We have UNAC in Maryland. We have NAPA that has 3 fundamental strengths, organizations, going strong, supporting candidates, doing wonders all over the nation. They're already there. But see, most of us don't know about these organizations, political organizations. We, apart from trust, we need to show up. Even in this Black Lives Matter that we're getting together to do, there was simple ordering of t-shirts and people did not order on time. So they want the t-shirts, the deadline was over, the manufacturers cannot make it and they can't get it. Nigerians need to show up. We have here speakers on here that are here tonight that are showing on our screen. I want us, if we can, just ask, how many speakers from previous are on this forum tonight? They speak and they're gone. So how do we get anything done? You've got to show up. You've got to want a change. And this change is not just for us, it's for our children, it's for our grandchildren, great-grands, because we've chosen to be in America. We gave birth to these children in America and they're growing here. Moving forward, I said this before, I know that you're going to laugh about this, but please, let's think about it. Gun laws needs to be changed. In order to change it, let's all go and buy guns or just register for it. I hate guns. I don't like it. I'm not an advocate of guns, but let Black people go en masse to go register and qualify to buy guns and to get it. Even if you don't handle it, the gun laws will change.
Definitely.
We need to get our minorities to go register to vote. We need to work hard and work together. We need to vote to make changes. We need to put the person we want there. If we sit home and we don't register to vote, then we cannot make any changes. We cannot move anything forward. We need to work together with those who want to work. In every organization, everywhere, you will see a handful of people who are ready to do it. Let's do it. We'll be doing it for everyone else. Don't look and say, oh, that person is not showing up. And no, as many as is willing to, let's work together. I mentioned, you know, everyone's been talking about, we need to have this organization, we need to have that. We have all of them. We need to have a website that will collate all Nigerian organizations, if we start there, if not the businesses, so that when somebody needs anything, they can go there and find what they need. I said that in the beginning. And when we get grants, we have opportunities for them, then we can put it on the website and say, hey, or call that organization and say, oh, there's this grant or this incentive here that you can use. There's this thing you can tap into here. It doesn't have to be grants, it doesn't have to be money alone, it could be anything. People need internships. We can look into the website and see who can offer our children or family or friends, whoever, what have you, who needs internships, and they'll be able to go there. We need to do that. We need to do it ASAP. There's so much we need to do. And there's a long list I have here that after the march, we should not let this die. Look, it's the beginning. August 28th is just to show that we're here, we're thinking, we're Nigerians, we're Blacks, and we're part of this fight. We need to get our voices heard. Look, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. As Mr. Oyibo had said, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. The Chinese people are doing it. It's not about how many generations of us are here now. Think of how long the Chinese have been in Nigeria, and they've taken over so many areas of the country. They don't need time. If you mean business, the time you've been somewhere is not what dictates what you get. It's what you need to put in it and how you strategize. We should look at people who have successfully done this. When they show their economic prowess, they have a say, they have a voice in the society, in the community. The Jews have it. We have to look at them. I'm not saying that we have to do things exactly the way they do it. I'm not saying that we need to have Chinatown. No, but we can learn how to come together and have a strong voice. We can come and learn together how we can help each other build. We need to help each other build. We need to put money together. I know about this too, so I belong to a group myself, but it's not enough. That is just, you know, a small group. We need to do things that would be more profound, that would give us a voice in our communities. And in the United States, we've chosen to be here. We've been silent for too long. Nigerians have brains. I don't know any race in this world that have the brains that we have. Go look at stats. Go see the most educated race in this country. And that's including Caucasians. If Nigerians decide to go the right track, they are the best there. When they decide to do 419, they are the best there. That's because we have brains. Let's put the brains together. Mm-hmm. Together, we'll be stronger. Individually, we will just be toiling. Individually, we need to be strong, and we need to bring that individuality together. If we are not individually strong, we cannot even bring anything to the table. Can you offer what you don't have? Mm. You cannot. But we have that individual strength. Let's come together, brothers and sisters. Let's show up. You here tonight? Show up next week. Show up week after. If you don't show up, how are we going to get things done? Everybody is needed at the table. Let's go to work, and the Lord would bless us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, all I can say is amen and amen. Thank you very much for that.
Amen.
Thank you for that resounding contribution. Look, we could continue on and on. It's already 8 p.m. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you for giving us the additional time that all of you have provided. The speakers have been wonderful. Thank you for your deep insights. You know, the granularity that we've had today is just phenomenal. We've been talking at a high level. You know, today we went down to brass tacks of exactly what those things are that we need to do in order to move forward. So extremely insightful. We now know what to do. Dr. O has given us the charge. If we're going to do big things, we should be able to demonstrate our capacity for action with small things. So the march is coming. It's on August 28th. For those in the DMV area, please join. If you have not yet registered to march, we just need to know how many people are going to be part of this. Go ahead. Those are the details. You will also see them copied into the chat. Please go ahead, register to march. If you want to be part of the panel, you have insights you want to share, you have views and opinions that you believe will benefit us, please join us. We need all voices. Bring your perspectives to the table. Let's continue to learn from each other, and let's continue to build up that list of those things that we will do, not just talk about, but things that we're actually going to get done. There are some things that we can actually start doing right away. Information is power. And as Dr. O and other speakers have indicated, if I want to know, even if I wanted to spend with the Nigerian community, I don't know who to spend with. Who are the lawyers? You have to be asking around to find out who the lawyers are. You have to start checking and looking into different databases, maybe calling associations of doctors to know who the Nigerian doctors are. But we should have a repository, one place where we should be able to go to and find whatever information we want to find out. If we wanted investment groups, if we wanted to get insights into banks that other Nigerian Americans have perhaps used, that have been able to allow them achieve big things and provided them with insight, we don't know that. And the challenge of that is we keep having to, each individual as we come in, we keep having to learn or relearn everything all over again, except if we are fortunate to run into people who might provide us with that information. Now we know that we can do our community a great world of good if we bring all of that knowledge together and share that, and so that people will know that, look, there are platforms that we can use to advance ourselves, advance our community, and ensure that our stay in this country allows us, as Mr. Adewusi very succinctly said in the beginning, to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Register to march. Send us an email if you want to participate. We're on Facebook. Please join the conversation. We'll see you again next week. Next week is going to be the last panel before the march. So please come along. It's going to be additional conversations about what we continue to do as a community beyond the march. Very granular points today. Please accept. Again, we want to thank the panel for the incredible insights they provided. Mrs. Akinshola, thank you. Dr. Opesanmi, thank you. Mr. Adewusi, thank you. And Mr. Charles Oyibo, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, and have a great week ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
God
everyone.
bless. God bless. Nice to meet all of
you.
you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Let's go to work.
That's right.